Hi everybody, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. So I'm continuing my two-part video series on documenting my experiences of Samadhi. In my previous video I spoke about what it was like for me to enter Savikalpa Samadhi for the first time. And I'll link that video in the description below. Now I'm going to share my experience of entering the second state of Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the formless Samadhi. So I entered Nirvikalpa Samadhi at the end of 2020. Not quite the end, around October of 2020. It was just under 2 years after I'd entered Savikalpa Samadhi for the first time. And I was practicing Raja Yoga much less frequently by then. I'd dropped down to practicing about once a week by then, but I was having consistently deep meditations through that period. But now I was able to enter a state of Savikalpa Samadhi in a particular meditation that I was doing on this day. And that state of Savikalpa Samadhi very quickly transformed into a different state again. So what was it like to enter Nirvikalpa Samadhi? Well, there's not really much that I can say at all, because it was an experience that was so outside of what the human mind is used to, or what this existence that we inhabit is like, that it was kind of hard for my consciousness to even process it at the time. And it was only in retrospect, with my consciousness trying to recollect the experience, that there was any sort of shift or comprehension in my mind. But at the time of experiencing Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it was just white noise. It was just white noise going through my head. Like when you have a TV and you're changing channels and you change to a channel that is static. That's what it felt like. It was different to when I experienced Savikalpa Samadhi. When I experienced Savikalpa Samadhi, it was like there was an awareness of a kind of large open space filled with a fluctuating blackness. But now even that spatial awareness was gone. Even the distinction between dark and light was gone. Even the idea of fluctuation was gone. There was just nothingness. And there was nothing really for my awareness to grasp onto or define. It was very strange. It was like a black hole had opened up in my awareness and just engulfed everything. And then I quickly dropped down from the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, not long after I'd entered it. And then the meditation came to an end, not long after that. And as I focused on the experience, I felt drawn back towards it, not because I had any kind of longing or desire for the experience. I have to emphasize that. There was no feeling of joy or ecstasy associated with the experience. In fact, it was a very neutral experience, very neutral, more neutral in fact than anything that was worldly. There was no like or dislike, attraction or repulsion at all. But there was this kind of strange magnetic pull that I felt every time that I recollected the experience, like I was being sucked back into that black hole that had opened up. And I had a chance to observe what my thoughts were doing as I was starting to come out of the meditation where I'd entered this state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And I had a chance to observe what my thoughts were like in the hours following that experience when I'd resumed day-to-day life for the rest of the night. And it was like my thoughts were being jammed by another signal. Like I couldn't help but be dissociated from thought. And I couldn't take any thoughts seriously. I just saw it arise and pass away and didn't really think much more of it. There was this extreme sort of detachment from anything that I was experiencing. In fact, after this experience, it was only by exerting great effort that I was able to treat worldly things as having any importance. I kind of realized that I had to find a way of continuing to function in the world after having experienced this state, but I didn't particularly have any feeling like I needed to do that. So I had to kind of recognize an importance in doing things in the world without actually believing it. And I had to get by that way for a while, maybe a day or so afterwards. And I remember also that the night where I went to sleep after having the samadhi, I had some very interesting experiences as well. I had a very deep sleep. And although I didn't sleep for very long, I felt very refreshed after it anyway. And I remember that I had dreams, and the dreams were very vivid. And I was very conscious in the dreams. And I remember when I woke up from my state of sleep that I had no concept of the future when I woke up. As I started to wake up some more, that came back, but it wasn't there at first. And so in the days that followed this experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I remember the feeling that I had was one of emptiness. I wouldn't necessarily say that it was one of joy or even peace, but simply an absence of disturbance. So in that sense, you could say that it was a kind of calm that was not really easily shaken. But I do remember that at the times where I did behold beauty, it was a very pure kind of beauty. Like I remember in the days after I'd had the experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I was driving to work in the morning, and I happened to see the way that the morning light danced on a bit of concrete, and I just thought that it was really beautiful. And of course, if we had the ego or discrimination in place when we see a scene like that, we would immediately start to make value judgments and say that concrete is ugly, concrete is pedestrian, there's nothing beautiful about that. But as I was observing my surroundings without any sense of ego or discrimination, I was able to see the beauty in everything. And I could see, and I could really focus on the beauty of things in great detail. Like I remember seeing some bottle brush flowers on the drive there, and just as I came to a stop in my car and just really appreciating in intricate detail the beauty of those bottle brush flowers. And so this was what I was capable of feeling after I had had this experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And as the days went on, eventually those feelings started to fade. But I had the memory of the experience. And I've read other people's accounts of Nirvikalpa Samadhi being like this really great heavenly experience. But it wasn't like that for me. There was nothing qualifying it as good or bad. It was just empty. And so in that sense, it was more like the formless jhanas of Buddhism than what sometimes gets described as samadhi. But it was most definitely a state of formlessness, and it was most definitely a development of an earlier state of Savikalpa Samadhi. So I can only come to the conclusion that I had entered Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And because of my own expectations about what the nature of divinity was, etc., I experienced that state of samadhi as a great emptiness. So that was my experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's still hard to make heads or tails of it, but perhaps me recounting the experience will be of some help to people in understanding it, in trying to think about what it might be like if they entered Nirvikalpa Samadhi one day in their practice. But perhaps people's experiences of these things differ from person to person. But I hope that you've found this documentation of my experience interesting and helpful. If you want to share your own experiences, please do so in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content like this. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.